So, fellas, the NCAA catching a lot of people off guard with sweeping changes to those NCAA rules when it comes to player agents and eligibility to players who go undrafted. Stephen A., what issues do you have with the changes?
Well, overall that I'm disappointed. I mean, they're crawling in the right direction when they should be high stepping into the right direction. It doesn't take Einstein to figure out some of the things that need to be addressed and some of the things that need to be done. One of the things is what John Calipari accurately pointed out in terms of what if the kid planned on leaving, doesn't get drafted, wants to come back to school, but the scholarship has been given away. That's problematic. That's problem number one. Problem number two, from what the reports are stating, neither the NBA or USA Basketball were aware of some of these things that the NCAA was on the verge of trying to implement. They're talking about classifying elite players and how USA Basketball is going to determine whether or not that player is elite, and only then can you go about the business of hiring representation. I'm one of those people who's an advocate of the student athlete having some form of representation across the board, because that is why the NCAA has been allowed to be the flaming hypocrites that they are, getting away with the multitude of things that they have gotten away with in an effort to exploit these kids for years and years and years. Not to mention the fact that you still don't have rights to your name. You still can't profit or monetize things off of your name, but the NCAA is allowed to do it. These are the kind of things that need to be addressed. I don't think they've gone nearly as far as they could have nor should have in this matter. And it seems to me like they've been a bit disorganized because you didn't communicate enough with the NBA nor with USA Basketball. And apparently, if you're listening to John Calipari, with college coaches to really understand the nuances and to address the things that are necessary to be addressed. So overall, I was very disappointed, even though I will concede it's a step in the right direction. They're tippy-toeing instead of stomping and high-stepping in the right direction. And that is where my disappointment lies, because it's not as complicated as they're trying to make it out to be.
I think there are two obvious, glaring deficiencies here. And Coach Calipari pointed out one, and Stephen A. just pointed out the other. First, the Calipari, the transfer contingency for student athletes or players who declare and then want to come back. What happens there? That needs to be addressed. And Stephen A. is basically bringing up the revenue. Address the revenue. That's what needs to be addressed. So, and that leads me to my one big important takeaway from all this, which is in fact the biggest problem. Why is it, you have to ask yourself, do this thought experiment, which I'm fond of doing thought experiments on this show, Stephen A. Do this one. Why should the NCAA care what you do with your own name? Because sometimes they're not even profiting off your autograph or whatever else, right? So if that money is not being generated and they're not taking it, what do they care if you generate it and take that money? And that leads to the big issue. It's not that they don't want to share revenue or share the money. It's that they clearly believe that they must protect the veneer of amateurism that covers their sport, that covers their institution. That veneer of amateurism for the NCAA it's clearly, they believe, to me, central to their ability, to their, ironically, commercial appeal. The amateurism, and the irony of all of this, always, their amateurism is central to their commercial appeal. So what they want to protect more than anything is that veneer of amateurism, and that is the hypocrisy to which, Stephen A., you refer. And until they address that, it's going to be the same old, this is more of the same.
Yeah. You're right. There's no question about that. But again, when I think about situations like this, I think about my former colleague here at ESPN, the one and only Greg Anthony, won a national championship with the Running Rebels at UNLV with Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon, and Anderson Hunt and the crew. And I remember when Greg Anthony, if I remember the story correctly, it was issues because obviously he's a businessman, he's a capitalist, and he was trying to generate his own business, I think selling T-shirts or something at the time, and essentially the NCAA had a problem with it. So what he did was forfeit his scholarship because the money that he was generating for himself would pay him more than the scholarship was worth. And so as a result, and they tried to give him problems with that, but ultimately conceded. It's just a shame that that's the extent that had to be exhausted before the NCAA was willing to step back and mind its own damn business and understand that they're not the only ones living in a capitalistic society trying to benefit off of the pleasures of capitalism. There are student athletes that would love to do the same, and they need to facilitate that as best as they possibly can.
And here's the issue. You're right, the capitalism, right? Here's the issue. Is it even possible? If you have a product where one of its central appeals is the fact that there's some kind of idea of the pure love for the game and that they're not getting paid, that they're amateurs, that they're not professionals, that they're not profiting, is it possible to point the camera at that, charge commercial airtime, and not share the revenue? Is it even, in other words, is it even possible? Once you point the camera at it, have you destroyed its appeal?
But the bottom line for me is let me know when the players actually get some spending money or can potentially profit off their likeness. Wake me up then.